Titan is the second novel about Cicero and the politics of ancient Rome. It follows on from my novel Imperium, but you don't have to have read Imperium in order, I think, to read Titan, which is a self-contained story. It covers 5 years. The first part of the book describes Cicero's consulship in 63 BC when he was running the Roman Empire, and he had to deal with a conspiracy against the state organised by the nobleman Catilina, who was backed by Crassus, the richest man in Rome, and also by the young Julius Caesar. And the first part of the book describes how Cicero, armed really with nothing except the power of oratory, managed to defeat Catilina's conspiracy. But he only did so at a price, which was putting to death 5 men illegally. And the second part of the book covers 4 years, and those are the years in which Cicero's position gradually unravels. The book is a kind of Greek tragedy, really, about a politician, a great man who performs an act for the best of motives, but who is ultimately destroyed by his own good intentions. The book is filled with big characters, men like Cicero himself, Julius Caesar, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, the great Roman general, Crassus, the richest man in Rome at that time, Catilina, Clodius, and Cato, and all these men fight for power. And the book is an attempt to look at what makes men want to have power and the endless corruption and tragedy and triumphs that attend political careers. And for me, this is a way of both bringing to life ancient Rome, but also acting as a commentary on our own modern politics. I worked as a political journalist in Britain and wrote a very much political book called Ghost, which came out a couple of years ago. My aim in these novels, Imperium and Titan, is to try to universalise the drama and excitement of politics. That is, if I wrote a book about politics in my own native country in England, probably very boring for a German audience, or let alone an Italian or a French audience. But if I can write about politics set in ancient Rome, which is the fountainhead of all our democracies and political systems, then it universalises it, and that's what I'm seeking to do. I want to bring ancient Rome to life and describe this extremely sophisticated system which was in operation 2,000 years ago of annual elections, power divided between 2 consuls, the 8 praetors, the head of the various courts of Rome, also all elected, 20 new senators elected each year. I want to describe that annual election process, the battles in the Senate, the manoeuvrings, the voting, how laws were passed, the whole struggle for power in Rome, and really to give some impression of what it was like to deliver a speech to 2,000 people in the open air without a microphone, or to try to talk to 600 senators in the Senate building. So my aim is to bring it alive, but also by doing so to write about politics in a way that anyone, wherever they live, can understand. I've always been fascinated by politics, by the drama of it, by the way in which it shows up human nature, tests men, whether they are courageous or whether they're cowards. Their strengths and their weaknesses are all exposed by politics, and not much has changed. Rome was the one great superpower of its day, and we now live in an era of one great superpower. And it seems to me that some of the problems that beset modern America also beset the Roman Republic in around 63 to 44 BC. That is the fundamental question: can you be a democracy and a world military superpower at the same time, or must your political system inevitably be corrupted by the demands of security and the amount of money that's pouring into your political system? So for me, the books have this dual function. They are about the past, bringing it alive, but also I hope they're a commentary on the present, and above all, I should say, I hope they're a good read with all the very vivid characters who I try to bring alive. We're fortunate in this period I'm writing about is in that there were contemporary sources, Plutarch, Suetonius, Sallustus, Cicero himself, Caesar. There's a lot of written material so that we can reconstruct what actually happened almost daily, sometimes even hourly. The fundamental debate in Titan is a debate on the 5th of December 63 BC that took place in the Senate, what to do with these 5 men arrested as traitors. And we have 3 of the speeches. We have the speeches of Cicero, Caesar and Cato have all come down to us. So there's quite a lot of material I could use. And then my job was to bring the characters to life, to provide their psychological motivation, and also to fill in the gaps where the record isn't clear. That was my job. And the method I chose of approach to the material was to use the voice of Cicero's secretary, Tiro, who was a real-life figure who worked with Cicero for 30 years and lived for many years after Cicero's death. And Tiro, wherever Cicero went, Tiro went with him. Their relationship was a bit like Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes. Tiro is the Dr. Watson figure who was in on every meeting and organised things for Cicero, and who did, in fact, write his memoirs. And so this is a sort of imaginary recreation of what that memoir might have been like, because Tiro's memoirs were lost when the Roman Empire collapsed. I think my great advantage is that I did not have a classical education. Therefore, I'm not one of these people who was forced to read Cicero and ended up hating his guts, because he could be so boring if you had to translate him. I came to it in a different way and looked at him as a human being and as a politician and as a speaker, but not as an exercise in the classroom. And I think that's been a great advantage to me. I've had to teach myself the whole era, and what I bring to it really is the experience of someone who was a political journalist and knows politicians. And so the thing that I could usefully do was to see how Cicero operated practically in his career and shed some light on that aspect of him. I have a great admiration for Cicero, who I think was a very interesting man, brilliant man, sympathetic to a modern reader actually, who rose by the power of his intellect, who didn't have strong family connections, he didn't have money, he wasn't a military man, he was very humanistic, he did not like cruelty to animals at the games and he tried to avoid those. He liked to defend in the law courts rather than prosecute. At the same time, he had many flaws. He was quite nervous, he became quite vain and egotistical. He liked money, but for all that, he was a great man, and I sympathise with him. And one of the things I want to do in the books is to rehabilitate him in a way, because there's been such focus on Julius Caesar as the great man of the era, but there is another view, which is that Caesar was a kind of Napoleon or even a Hitler figure, a dictator who killed hundreds of thousands of people and destroyed a democratic system and imposed his own rule. So for me, Cicero is the man who stood against him and tried to fight him, and that makes him interesting to me.